Margaret Watson always woke up early. It was still dark outside when her alarm went off at 5 a.m., but she didn't mind. She had gotten used to it over the years. As the head nurse at a children's hospital in Chicago, her day always started early and ended late. Taking care of sick children wasn't easy, but it gave her life meaning. Every time she saw a little one smile, it reminded her why she did this work. She got out of bed quietly, stretched, and slipped into her white nurse's uniform. After brushing her hair into a simple bun, she poured herself a small cup of coffee and looked out her window. The city was slowly waking up. 2 years ago, Margaret bought this tiny apartment just 15 minutes from the hospital. It wasn't fancy or big, but it was hers. The walls were covered with crayon drawings, thank you cards, and photos, all from the children she had cared for over the years. One photo always made her pause. It was of Sarah Jenkins, a sweet 12-year-old girl with big brown eyes and a quiet smile. Margaret had met Sarah 2 years ago when she came to the hospital with leukemia. At just 10 years old, Sarah had already been through too much. Her parents had died in a car crash, and she'd been passed from one distant relative to another. Margaret had noticed right away how lonely she was. So, she gave Sarah extra care. When Sarah started losing her hair from chemotherapy, Margaret did something unexpected. She cut her own hair short too. "Now we match," she had told Sarah with a smile. Sarah had laughed, the first real laugh Margaret had seen from her. Even after Sarah's cancer went into remission and she was placed with a foster family, they kept in touch. Sarah would visit after school, send Margaret letters, and call her when she was scared or sad. Lately, Margaret had been thinking about something big, adopting Sarah. She was a single woman, and it wouldn't be easy, but the love she felt for that little girl had only grown stronger. She wanted to give her the family she never had. Just then, Margaret's phone buzzed. The screen said, "Mom." She took a deep breath before answering. "Hi, Mom. Maggie, sweetheart. How are you? Are you free this weekend?" her mother, Frances, asked in a cheerful voice. "I don't have any plans," Margaret said, her voice calm. "Why? Oh, wonderful. We're having a barbecue on Saturday in the backyard. The whole family's coming. Can you come too?" Margaret paused. She opened her calendar. Saturday was her birthday, not that her family usually remembered. When they did, it was just a short phone call or a dinner with no cake. Her younger sister, Rebecca, on the other hand, always had big parties with decorations, gifts, and lots of attention. Still, Margaret said, "Sure. Should I bring anything?" No, just bring yourself," her mother replied. After the call ended, Margaret sat quietly, feeling mixed emotions. Her parents had always treated Rebecca like the favorite. Rebecca was the cheerleader, the popular one, the one who went to a fancy college and married a wealthy man. Margaret had always been the quiet one. When she became the head nurse, her father said, "That's good, but you should have become a doctor." Still, she had people who cared for her. Her best friend, Eleanor Green, was a senior nurse at the hospital. They had started around the same time and supported each other through everything. They often went to dinner together, sometimes with Eleanor's brother, James, a quiet, kind-hearted architect who always made Margaret feel calm and seen. Margaret also had Edna Miller, her neighbor and friend who had lost her husband a few years ago. Edna often said, "Maggie, you don't need anyone's approval. You're more than enough." On Saturday morning, Margaret dressed with extra care. She chose a pale blue dress that made her feel beautiful, styled her short hair neatly, and added a little makeup. Looking in the mirror, she whispered to herself, "No matter what happens today, I have my own life. I've come a long way." She packed gifts, a nice bottle of wine for her dad, and her mother's favorite perfume, and drove to the house she grew up in. The front yard was still the same, flowers lining the walkway, the smell of barbecue in the air, and laughter coming from the backyard. Her father opened the door. "Hey, Maggie, you came," he said, like it was a surprise. "I did," she said with a smile, handing him the gift bag. When she stepped into the backyard, she stopped in surprise. There were decorations everywhere, balloons, flowers, a big table filled with food, even champagne glasses. About 20 people were there, including cousins, aunts, and family friends. It felt like a real party, something she hadn't seen since Rebecca's graduation. Her mother came over quickly. "Maggie. I'm so glad you're here. You look lovely." "Thanks, Mom. This is for you," Margaret said, handing her the perfume. "Oh, thank you." "You didn't have to," her mother replied, setting it aside casually. "Now go say hi to everyone." Rebecca's at the table. Rebecca sat at the center, glowing as usual. "So you made it," she said with a quick hug. "Nice dress. I picked out all the decorations. Aren't they great?" "They're beautiful," Margaret said honestly. Rebecca's husband Michael stood nearby. He was polite but always a bit cold toward Margaret. As the afternoon went on, Margaret began to relax. Relatives asked her about her job and even complimented her. "It must be so rewarding, helping children like that," Aunt Beth said warmly. "It is," Margaret replied, her heart softening. Maybe, just maybe, this party was for her birthday. She walked over to her mom. "This is a really lovely party," she said, her voice full of hope. Her mother smiled. "Yes, it's a special day." Margaret's eyes lit up. "You remembered my birthday?" she asked, tears beginning to form. Her mother blinked. "Oh, is that today?" "No, sweetheart, this is to celebrate Rebecca's pregnancy." Silence. Margaret's heart sank, her chest felt tight. "Rebecca's 3 months along," her mother added proudly. "We're announcing it today, didn't you know?" Behind her, she heard Rebecca laugh. "My sister always thinks everything's about her," she said loudly. She thought this was for her birthday. The crowd laughed. Margaret stood still, frozen with shame, her face turned red. Her father walked over awkwardly. "Maggie, I did remember your birthday. It's okay, Dad," she said quietly, forcing a smile. "Congratulations, Rebecca." But inside, something broke. She put down her glass, walked inside the house, and locked herself in the bathroom. She looked in the mirror and let the tears fall. It hurt, not just the forgotten birthday, but all the years of being unseen, of always coming second, of never being enough. Without saying a word to anyone, she slipped out of the house, got in her car, and drove back to the city. Tears ran down her cheeks. "No more," she whispered. "I'm done trying to earn their love." In the silence of her car, something new began to grow, strength. She was done chasing approval. She would build her own family, her own joy. She would adopt Sarah. Love didn't need to come from blood. 3 weeks passed. Margaret stayed busy at the hospital. New patients came in, and the ward was full of life and worry. She worked long hours, trying to bury the pain. "Maggie, you've worked 3 days in a row," Eleanor said one afternoon. "Come to dinner tonight. James will be there. He's been asking about you." Margaret hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, I'd like that." That evening, she went to Eleanor's cozy apartment. It smelled like warm bread and roasted vegetables. James stood when he saw her, his smile gentle. "Hi, Margaret, how have you been?" She sighed. "I've been okay. Work keeps me going." James nodded, his eyes kind. "Eleanor told me about what happened. I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have expected anything different," she said softly, "but this time I hoped." Over dinner, she opened up, really opened up. She talked about being the forgotten daughter, always living in Rebecca's shadow, about the party, and how much it hurt. James reached across the table and held her hand. "I've made a decision," Margaret said finally. "I'm going to adopt Sarah. I won't wait for my family to care. I'll build my own." James smiled warmly. "That's a beautiful decision, Margaret. You're going to change that girl's life." The next morning, Margaret felt a little nervous but hopeful. She had decided to visit Sarah's foster home to check on her. She hadn't seen her in a while, and something inside her told her it was time. But when she arrived, she got news that broke her heart. "I'm sorry, Miss Watson," said Jennifer Morris, a caseworker from Child Welfare Services, meeting her outside the home. "Sarah's no longer with the Johnsons. They returned her to the care facility." Margaret blinked in shock. "What do you mean, they returned her?" "They said she was too difficult. They felt they couldn't handle her emotional needs." Margaret's eyes filled with disbelief. Sarah is not a difficult child. She's been through so much. She just needs love, someone to understand her. Please, try to calm down, Jennifer said gently. She's safe now. She's at St. Mary's Children's Care Facility. And, actually, she's been asking for you. Those words stopped Margaret's heart for a moment. Sarah still wanted to see her. That's all that mattered. Without wasting any time, Margaret drove across the city to St. Mary's. As soon as she stepped into the building and looked down the hallway, she saw a small figure waiting at the end. Margaret, Sarah cried out the moment she saw her. She ran straight into Margaret's arms, tears streaming down her face. I'm here, sweet girl, Margaret whispered, hugging her tightly. I'm not going anywhere. I knew you'd come, Sarah sobbed. Margaret held her close. Of course, I will always come for you. They sat together in a small lounge room, where Sarah slowly explained what had happened. Her voice was soft and sad. Mr. Johnson tried to throw away my drawings, Sarah said. They were the ones I made with the crayons and sketchpad you gave me. Margaret frowned, trying to stay calm. Why would he do that? He said they were messy and took up space, Sarah mumbled, staring at her shoes. I yelled at him. I said he didn't understand me. Then he told me I was a bad kid and called the social worker. Margaret felt a wave of anger and sorrow. This wasn't right. Sarah wasn't a bad child. She was a hurt child, needing care and understanding. The more she listened, the more certain she became of what she needed to do. After comforting Sarah and staying with her for a while, Margaret asked to speak with Jennifer again before she left. I want to start the adoption process, Margaret said firmly. Officially. Jennifer raised her eyebrows. You do, Margaret, are you sure? You're a single woman with a very demanding job. Adoption is a serious step. I know, Margaret replied. Her voice didn't shake, but I also know what Sarah needs, and I know I can give it to her. We need each other. Jennifer looked at her for a long moment. Then, she slowly nodded. All right, I'll start the paperwork, but just know, it's not easy. The screening process will be strict. I understand, Margaret said. I'm ready. In the weeks that followed, Margaret's life became a whirlwind. Between long hospital shifts and night duties, she found time to start preparing her home. She cleaned out the spare room and painted the walls a soft yellow. She bought a small bed, a desk, and even framed some of Sarah's old drawings for the walls. Her schedule at the hospital was adjusted, thanks to the support of her coworkers. Eleanor was by her side every step of the way, often bringing coffee and encouraging words. James helped her pick out furniture for Sarah's room and showed up with a bookshelf he'd built himself. Edna, her kind neighbor, came over in the evenings to talk and keep her company while she worked on the room. Maggie, Edna said one evening as they drank tea, you are one of the strongest women I know. Not many people choose their path with as much heart as you. Margaret smiled softly. I don't feel strong, Edna, but I know what I want, and I know I'm not alone. You've been more like a mother to me than my own mother ever was. Edna reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Sweetheart, family isn't always about blood, it's about love, and you and Sarah already have that. In late July, James invited Margaret to the Chicago Art Museum. They had been spending more time together, and something gentle and real was beginning to grow between them. As they walked through the museum, stopping in front of a painting of a quiet garden, James spoke. Margaret, he said, I've been thinking, I'd really like to meet Sarah too. Margaret blinked in surprise. You would? He nodded. Of course, I like kids, especially ones who love art. Maybe we could even draw something together. She might like that. Margaret smiled, her heart warming. She would love that. Thank you, James. That weekend, they all visited Sarah, Margaret, James, Eleanor, and Edna. Sarah lit up with joy. She ran up to Margaret and clung to her hand, and she looked at James with curiosity. Who's that? She whispered. That's my friend, James, Margaret said, trying not to blush. Is he your boyfriend? Sarah asked with a grin. Margaret turned red. Not exactly. James laughed gently, but maybe one day. Sarah giggled and took his hand, already comfortable with him. The two of them talked about buildings, colors, and drawings, and it was clear they got along well. By mid-August, the adoption process was nearly complete. The home inspection had gone smoothly. Margaret had passed the financial background check. The social workers saw how close she and Sarah were. All that remained now was the final interview. Margaret knew it wouldn't be easy, but this time, she didn't feel scared. She felt ready.